Hello and welcome to this short screencast on Mile High Early Learning's Preschool Weekly Lesson Plan form. In this screencast, I am going to be walking you through the lesson planning form, including what should go into each box on the lesson plan form and how to properly use the back of the lesson plan form. So let's go ahead and start at the top. The very first line on the lesson plan form talks about a topic or study. In a Montessori-inspired classroom, we would like for teachers to be planning around the children's ideas and interests, and oftentimes this can involve a topic of study. It doesn't have to involve a topic of study, but if the children happen to be interested in, let's say, dinosaurs would be an appropriate thing to study for your topic of study. Additionally, a lot of times teachers feel like they might need to be changing the topic of study weekly or maybe even bi-weekly, but as long as children are engaged in the topic and it is a topic that is of interest to them and it's a topic that you can continue to expand upon in your teaching practice, then it is perfectly acceptable to have a topic of study expand anywhere from 2 weeks up to a month, maybe even up to 6 weeks if it's still working for your group of children. So the topic of study really should be based on what's going on in your classroom, what the children are interested in, what the children want to study, and how you are able to extend and expand upon their learning through that topic of study. I think a good resource, which I'd be happy to provide, is the project approach, where sometimes in the project approach topics are being studied for extended periods of time, including up to 2 months, as long as it's working for the children. What we want to avoid here is teachers resulting to topics of study that are very much theme-based or based maybe on the calendar year. So, for instance, feeling like just because it's October, you have to study fall and pumpkins. If the children aren't really interested in that, then I don't think that that's a worthwhile topic of study. Really what you want to be doing is engaging the children and helping you decide what the topic of study should be in your classroom, and then planning around their interest, and then continuing to expand upon their interests and provide them with intentional experiences based on this topic of study. Moving over to the next piece, week of and teachers is pretty self-explanatory. On to the next kind of area of the lesson plan, which is changes to the classroom environment. The way that I explain this to people is that this is a literal change to the classroom environment. So myself, as the director of curriculum instruction, or any of the coaches, or your program director, or even your peers, should be able to walk into your classroom and either see the children using the materials that you listed on changes to the classroom environment and or see them out on your shelf. So in this, you wouldn't necessarily list things that you have in your block area every day. So you're not going to list, hollow blocks and Legos. Those are things that are out all the time. But if it's something that you have put out, for instance, like the ramps in the block area, because maybe it's a reflection of your topic of study, or maybe it's something that that Joe is interested in, so you decide to put the ramps in the block area for him to use. Either way, these are things that are physical changes to your classroom environment and things that are left out for children to access whenever they would like. So ramps is a good example of this. In the art area, maybe you have put out some collage materials, and those materials are going to sit out on the art shelf for children to access, like I said, throughout the day whenever they want. This is not small group work. So say your topic of study was the mountains and you decide that you're going to do some rock painting. That is a small group activity and wouldn't necessarily go into the art area and changes to the classroom environment unless you were putting out a tray with rocks and paint on it that children could access at any time. Again, these are things that I should be able to walk into your classroom, or the coach should be able to walk into your classroom, or the program director, or your peers, and see either the children using and or out on your shelves for children to access. And because of that, that means that you may not be filling out every single box on the weekly lesson plan form every week with something new. Additionally, you also might not be making a change to the physical classroom environment in every single one of these areas every single week, and that's okay. However, it's not appropriate for you to just list the same things over and over and over and over and over again for an extended period of time. So this is really when you're thinking about the things that you are pulling out, the materials that you're pulling out, maybe to meet the need of a particular child or to meet the need of the whole entire group. So again, you may not be filling out every single one of these boxes with something new every week, and I actually wouldn't expect that, because we shouldn't be putting out materials for 1 week and then putting them away. We would put out materials until children are done using them, have gotten what they needed to, till they need to move on to the next step before we provide something else. And I also wouldn't necessarily say that you are changing every single area of your classroom every single week. But again, these are literal changes to the classroom environment. These are not small group and or large group activities that you are doing with the children. That actually comes on the next part of the form, which is related to the daily experience. So we would expect in a Montessori-inspired classroom that you are having some sort of large group gathering and small group gathering. So the morning and the afternoon gathering should be geared more towards large group things that are being done with your whole entire class. These things can be things that are routine, so you could be writing on here, during circle time, we are going to sing our welcome song, and we are going to talk about hand washing, and I'm just thinking about that because of what's going on recently. And we are going to practice our names, the first letters of our names. And those are okay things to continue to write on here in a repetitive nature, because those are things that you are doing every single day during circle time, and that's totally appropriate. Same thing for the afternoon. You should have some sort of afternoon gathering for the children to be around. In an AM PM class, this would be where you could kind of talk about what's going to go on in the morning and then again in the afternoon. But again, these things can be very routine things, and this can look the same across the board. One thing that might look different is what you are choosing to talk about during circle time, because circle time is a great time to gather the children to talk about what's about ready to happen next. What are we going to do today? What are we studying? What kinds of activities are we going to do in relation to our study? So that might be something that changes. It is appropriate to write something like read a book. However, it might be more helpful to your practice to actually list out what book you are going to be reading during this time. Just a way to hold yourself accountable and also make sure that you have a plan. Small group work is just what it states. This is the activities that you are going to be doing during work cycle time that are small group activities that are geared towards individualization for children, but also probably in relation to your topic of study and also in relation to the interests and ideas of the children that you're working with. So this would be where you list, we are going to do finger painting, or we are going to work on the ABC puzzle. Whatever it is that you have planned for that day that is small group work that is meant to support children, either the individual needs of children or a small group of children, would be done during this time. This is also something that can be repeated. So we know that maybe if we're planning an art activity, we might not get to all the children in one work cycle time, and that's okay. So it's okay if that activity extends into the next day. Additionally, I'm a very firm believer that children need repeated experiences. So it's appropriate to be working on that ABC puzzle for more than one day over a period of time. The next line on here is outdoor activities. You should be providing some sort of structured outdoor activity for children every day. It can be in relation to your topic of study. It could be in relation to some skills that you know that you need to work on from your TSG. So whatever it is, you should have some sort of structured activity for children outdoors. That doesn't mean they necessarily all have to participate in it, but you should have some sort of structured outdoor activity planned for young children. We know that social and emotional skills is extremely important at this age group, so we want to make sure that we are being very intentional about what it is that we are planning for children in terms of social and emotional. So you should have some sort of activity that is focused on social and emotional skills and skill building. This could bleed into your outdoor activities, your small group work, and your morning or afternoon gathering, and in fact it probably should. If you're talking about sharing in the classroom, that's something that you're probably going to do at any gathering that you have, but there are small group activities that you could do too to teach the skill of sharing. So you want to make sure that you have some intentional embedded focus on the needs, the social and emotional needs of the children in your class. What you should be doing is, again, repeated experiences. So we wouldn't list on here, today we're going to talk about sharing, the next day we're going to talk about how to be a friend, the next day we're going to talk about what to do if we have a problem. Children need time and experience to learn skills. So we would want to make sure that this is a repeated focus that is relevant to what's going on in the classroom. So again, this shouldn't take too terribly long because some of the things that you're listing on here are going to be repetitive, and that's okay. It just can't be repetitive every single day and every single week for the whole entire school year. So we're really making sure that we're looking at what our children need and what it is that they're interested in and combining that to help support children as we plan weekly for them. Important reminders, this is all stuff for the family. Important reminders would be like parent-teacher conferences are coming up, no school next Monday, there's a PD day, all that great grand stuff. Health and nutrition, a lot of people tend to put in here culture of wellness, but if there was anything else you were noticing, like children really do need to practice washing their hands, you could stick that right here. And then family school connection, a lot of times I see a lot of things here about the 5x5 card, and I think that that's totally appropriate. You could also list some activities that you think might be helpful for the children to be working on at home with their families, and make sure you're providing those resources. Down here it says denotes a STEM activity, so if you did decide that you were doing something that was STEM, you might just want to star it so you have that information. So the back of the lesson plan form. So when we are talking about TSG results accountability, we are really focused on this back piece of the lesson plan form in particular. This is where you would take things directly from TSG and list them out. So your activities would go over here. You're going to tie them back to the TSG objectives, which honestly, TSG does that for you, and then you're going to list your targeted children. So there's a few things to note. Things that you're listing back here on this page could potentially go here on the front, maybe not everything, but for the most part, any small group work you're doing should be tied to TSG and is going to fit very nicely onto this first page. So make sure that you are listing activities back here, but some of that information is making it into the front of the lesson plan as well. Additionally, you do not need to write out all of the TSG objectives. Stating 1A would be perfectly fine. Don't feel like you have to put too much work in that as long as you know what TSG objectives that your activity is going to meet. This is target children is where I see a lot of confusion as well. So it is not appropriate to put all for every activity that you're doing back here. As part of being a Head Start, we should be individualizing for children. So when you are planning an activity and relating it to TSG, you should know what children you are targeting. So you should be putting that back here where it says target children. Additionally, we need to only be using initials. We're not displaying the back page for anybody to see, but it still needs to be filled out. And we wouldn't want anybody to accidentally flip it over and see information about other people's children. So please make sure you're using initials, and please make sure that every single child in your classroom is represented somewhere here on the back of the lesson plan. So that means some activities you might say all, and that's okay. But we wouldn't put that for every single activity on the back of the preschool weekly lesson plan form. So there's the short video and screencast on how to use the preschool weekly lesson planning form. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your coach or myself. I'm hoping this video will help us as we continue to kind of delve into what is an effective lesson plan in a Montessori inspired classroom. So again, reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.